Hello everyone. Today we are starting with the introduction to Indian Constitution. If you are any UPSC, PCS, judiciary exams aspirant or you are just someone who wants to actually understand the document that shapes your rights, your government and your everyday life, you are at the right place. Indian Constitution is not just a legal rule book, it's the story of how a newly independent nation, which was torn by partition and was drowning in diversity, tried to build one and identity out of thousand different ones. In this video, we are breaking this down, not just what it says, but why it was written that way, what debates happened in the Constituent Assembly, and how it actually plays out in real life today. But by the end, you won't just memorize it, you will understand it, and trust me, that's what actually helps in the exam. Moving to its Article 1, Article 1 does something remarkable in a single sentence. It not only just names the nation, honors it the two civilizational identities, defines the nature of the union as indestructible, and lays the legal groundwork for how internal boundaries can evolve, all before the constitution even gets to rights and governance. It's not just an opening line, it's the architecture of Indian federalism compressed into 8 words. Let's start with the actual words. Article 1 says India, that is Bharat, shall be the union of states. Now let's just deconstruct it. India, that is Bharat, a name chosen, not given. The framers didn't just name a country, they reconciled two civilizational identities into one sentence. India, the name known to the world rooted in the Indus, that is Sindhu, carried through Greek and Persian usage into colonial administration, but that was also thought as a colonial baggage, which further led to the inclusion of the Bharat, the indigenous name tracing back to the ancient texts like the Vishnu Purana and the Mahabharata, tied to the legendary king Bharata. Rather than choosing one over the other, the Constituent Assembly enshrined both as equally valid side by side. It was a quiet act of reconciliation, modern statehood, wearing an ancient name. Further, stating them as a union of states was considered a masterstroke because this is where Article 1 becomes genuinely brilliant and where most people underestimates its precision, why it was considered union and not a federation, as it was stated by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the Constituent Assembly. The union is the union because it is indestructible. The country and the people cannot separate. The constitution treats India as one integrated whole and not as a voluntary partnership. India is often called federal in form, unitary in spirit, and Article 1 of the Constitution, root of the unitary spine, states aren't sovereign partners in a contract, they are integral parts of a single indivisible whole. Rewinding to the Constituent Assembly debates between 1946 and 1949, this was more of an emotional debates in an entire drafting process. On one side, we have members like Seth Govind Das, Har Govind Pant pushing hard for the Bharat alone. Their argument that the word goes back to the ancient Puranas and the Sanskrit literatures. India had just thrown off the colonial rule. Why keep a name that is, in their view, carrying a colonial baggage? They wanted a they wanted that the country should reclaim its indigenous identity from day one. But on the other side, we had heavyweights like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Jawaharlal Nehru. Their reasoning was more practically oriented that India was already the name the world recognized. Switching it entirely could create a friction internationally, and at the moment when the new nation needed smooth diplomatic recognition, we cannot just switch it. So, what happened? A compromise. The Ambedkar's drafting committee landed on India, that is Bharat, which means both names constitutionally equal, no hierarchy between them, although we all know that debate is not over yet. Diving deep into the concepts, why didn't the constitution say federation of states like other federal countries do? Dr. Ambedkar addressed this directly in the Constituent Assembly. He gave three specific reasons. Reason 1, India's federation is not a result of any agreement between states compared to the United States, where the states came together voluntarily through a contract. Reason 2, that no state has a right to secede. This is the big one. No state and has the right to secede through any process of referendum or any other another unilateral declaration. Nothing in the constitution gives a state an exit door. Thirdly, the union itself is indestructible, even though individual state boundaries are not, meaning Parliament can redraw state boundaries, rename states, even merge or split them. What it cannot do is let a state leave the union entirely. In Dr. Ambedkar's own phrase, India is an indestructible union of districtable states. Keeping that last point in mind, because it's about to become very important, let's discuss some cases. These cases will tell a complete different story. First, State of West Bengal versus Union of India. West Bengal challenged the central government's power to acquire the coal-bearing land inside the state without the consent of state. The Supreme Court's answer was blunt. Indian states do not have separate sovereignty. Parliament can legislate on matters affecting state property. Court cemented what Article 1 already implies. India is one union, not a group of semi-independent states. Moving ahead to the Berubari Union case, this one's classic. In this, instead of acquiring territory, this is about giving territory away. Berubari was a small pieces of Indian territories that, under an agreement with Pakistan, now Bangladesh, was going to be transferred. The question before the Supreme Court was that can government just hand over territory through an ordinary agreement? The court said no. Ceding a Indian territory affects Article 1 and the first schedule directly. So it requires a full constitutional amendment act under Article 368. You cannot just give away a part of India with simple executive decision. This ruling had real consequences. It directly led to the Ninth Constitutional Amendment Act of 1960 passing specifically to legally enable the transfer. So here's a symmetry. Acquiring territory easy and ordinary law, ceding a territory hard. It needs a full constitutional amendment act. Another landmark cases about this article are Maganbhai Ishwarbhai Patel versus Union of India and Ramkishore Sen versus Union of India. In Maganbhai Ishwarbhai Patel versus Union of India 1970, the case draws the line more precisely. It asks, does every border adjustment needs a constitutional amendment? The court says no. If it's a minor boundary rectification and not an actual cessation of territories, an executive agreement is enough. No amendment needed. The logic behind it is simple. A small correction isn't giving away Indian territory. Next is the Ramkishore Sen versus Union of India case 1966. This one reaffirms Berubari from different angle. Any cessation of a territory to a foreign country affects India's sovereignty over the land. Therefore, must go through Article 368 amendment process and no shortcuts there. Putting these four cases together, we get a very clean rule of thumb. States have no sovereignty over the center. Acquiring land is simple, but giving away Indian territory is constitutionally hard. Article 1 does not work alone. Article 2, 3, and 4 are its supporting cast. Article 2 states that Parliament may admit new states into the Union or establish new states. This gives Parliament the power to admit entirely a new state into the Union or create a new one. Article 3 states that Parliament may form new states or alter the boundaries, name, or areas of existing states by simple majority of law. This lets Parliament alter the boundaries of areas of existing states, and this only needs a simple majority, not a constitutional amendment. Article 4 states that laws made under Article 2 and 3 are not treated as amendments under Article 368. This is actually why India has been able to reorganize its state so many times since independence. New states, renamed states, redrawn boundaries, all without touching Article 368 each time. The relevance of these articles have found today as courts recently used the principle of Article 1's indestructible union to strike down the secessionist arguments including insurgency related cases from Jammu and Kashmir and Nagaland It is one of the most constitutional foundation used to say no region can legally break away from India. Secondly, remembering the India Bharat naming debate from 1949, it came roaring back in 2023 countrywide when a G20 dinner invitation referred to the President of Bharat instead of President of India. It reignited the public and political debate about whether India should be officially renamed. As of now, no constitutional amendment has actually been made, so Article 1 still reads exactly as it was in 1949. These articles, from Ambedkar's Indestructible Union to today's Gorkhaland talks, these aren't history, they are happening right now. That's the power of this constitution. It did not just define India once, it gave India the tools to keep redefining itself forever. So, on that note, I would thank you guys